All right, we're excited. First day of school, here we go. We're ready to learn, to get some knowledge.
Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks again to the subscribers. I really appreciate it. I'm going to do a tag today, and it's a tag that I found randomly from Jean Bookish Thoughts. So I'm going to tag her in the description, and she originally got it from Rachel Reveals All, which is a bit of a weird one because when I checked Rachel Reveals All's original video, there's no videos on her channel anymore, so I'm not sure what happened there. But I'll leave a link to her channel anyway because she came up with a tag. So this is a tag called the Subject BookTag, and I've seen lots of people do it, other people do it as well. But this is my attempt to do the Subject BookTag, and basically it's the subjects in question are the subjects in school, and I thought as I'm a teacher, I thought it'd be nice to do this and then time it for when I go back in a few weeks. So in a few weeks it's going to pop up, and it will be sort of coinciding with when I start having my inset days and training and enrolment and all that sort of stuff before teaching actually starts. So because I teach post-16, I've added a couple of extra subjects because, well, actually I've added 3 subjects, and one of them is music, because music wasn't even in there, which is a bit crazy. But the other 2 are 2 that my college do that I don't think are necessarily in the school. So the idea is you take a subject and you pick a book that you want to talk about that's related to that subject. So the first one is maths, and for maths you have to pick a crime related book. So what I've done is I've actually picked 2 non-fiction books. So as you may know from seeing previous videos, I'm a history graduate, so I studied history for 3 years at university and trained to teach it as well. And one of my favourite things I did was when I did an essay on crime, and it was about how the question was, for the essay, the question was how organised was organised crime in the 16th century in London. And it's really fascinating because it's actually really organised. So it's quite a fascinating thing to look into. And one of the books that I used a lot was this one, Crime and Punishment in England, an Introductory History. And there's a companion book that goes with it. It's a source book, and it's got, you know, obviously the primary sources. So it's got the documents that you'd use to investigate what that's like. So I don't know how available these are now. Absolutely brilliant books. So any kind of primary source book, if you're interested in history, primary source books are really fascinating, and I'll be talking about them again soon because I want to do a video on witchcraft as well, which I've got some really cool books on that. So that's my choice for crime. The next one is science, and it says pick a science fiction book. Well, clearly I've got a lot of those, but what I'm going to go for now, I haven't mentioned it before, but I have mentioned similar books, and this is Doing Time by Jodie Taylor. So this is sort of a follow-up series. There's 3 at the moment, I think, that are follow-up from her huge series, The Chronicles of St. Mary's. But this is like a spin-off, and it focuses on the time police. So the original series was these historians going back in time and finding out exactly what happened through time travel, and then coming back and adjusting the records accordingly. But the time police were characters in that series, and when things went wrong and time was changed, the time police would be trying to punish the people that were doing that, and this is just about them. So this was the first one in the time police trilogy, I'm going to say. I think it's a trilogy at the moment. I mean, Jodie Taylor will probably keep writing them, but yeah, that's my choice for science fiction. The next one is English Lit, and you have to choose a classic book. So what I've chosen for that, because I think he's amazing, is Franz Kafka. So if you haven't read any Kafka yet, I'd absolutely recommend it. This is Metamorphosis, which is one of his most famous ones. The 2 most famous ones are Metamorphosis and The Trial. And The Trial is my favourite, really. But he's a really interesting writer, and obviously very influential to the point where there's now a word in our dictionary that means Kafkaesque, which is all sorts of different connotations, but fascinating, brilliant writer that definitely recommend you look into if you don't know his stuff. And then art. Okay, so for the art subject, it's pick a book with a beautiful cover. So I'm actually going to choose 3 different books here because I couldn't choose which one I was going to pick. So the first one is a really lovely cover by Adrian Tchaikovsky's Cage of Souls. Look at that. I'll try and do a close up. Very nice. And this one I confess I haven't read yet. So this is the next Tchaikovsky one I'm going to read. And I've talked about how much I love these covers before. But yeah, this one is also less salacious as well. And this is Stephen King's The Colorado Kid. I love this cover. I mean, it says beautiful cover, and obviously that looks more horrific than beautiful, but I still think there's something beautiful about the design and the way it looks and the artwork, so I do love that. Yeah, hard case crime books have all got really good covers, but that's my favourite out of the ones that I've seen. I've seen about, or I've got about 8 of them, but this is my favourite one. And then I really like my copy of Colour Purple. There's something beautiful about that cover. I love it. So how cool is that edition? So there's loads of editions. Obviously, it's a really important and classic book, but I love that cover. Okay, the next one is languages. So pick a book that's a translated novel. So for that one, I'm going to go back to something that I talked about a little while ago, a few months back. I talked about this really nice book by Hiromi Kawakami, Strange Weather in Tokyo. It's a really interesting book that is written in a way that keeps you immersed in the story, but it's only a little small story about 2 characters that kind of become really close, and they sort of start this relationship, and it's really good. So Strange Weather in Tokyo. History. So history, you have to pick a historical fiction book. So for historical fiction, interestingly, I don't have a lot of historical fiction. So I've got a lot of history books, but historical fiction is not something I've really necessarily got into. I think part of it is, it's the same thing with historical films. Historical films always play with the truth loads, and there's, it's like, well, I'm watching this, but which bits are the truth and which bits are they embellished to make it a better film? And I'm a little bit skeptical of the historical novels as well, and I'm sure they do a lot of research. So the point is, I don't really know which bits are, are embellishments and which bits aren't. But it's just something I haven't really delved into much. But I do collect Ursula K. Le Guin books, and Lavinia is actually set in ancient times and set in ancient Greece. So that's pretty cool. It turns out Ursula Le Guin has done more than just science fiction and fantasy. There's a historical novel there. And then geography. A book that's set somewhere else besides the UK and the USA. For this one, this is a really interesting book, The Thing Itself by Adam Roberts. This is a book that is set in the Antarctic, and it's a separate story but heavily influenced by The Thing, or Who Goes There, but more importantly probably the John Carpenter version of The Thing rather than the original story. Yeah, very interesting kind of extension of the plot with lots of philosophy in it, and an interesting read, but set in the Antarctic at a research station, clearly. And a music-related one. So we're now on to the 3 subjects I'm adding. So I'm adding music, philosophy, and dance, because I thought it'd be interesting. So music-related books. This is a really interesting book I've just started looking at. I got from the library. Change is Going to Come. So this is Music, Race, and the Soul of America. So this is about the 60s and how important music played in the civil rights movement. It's a big chunky tome. but it's really good. I've started reading it, and it's an awesome book. So that's what I'm picking for music related. Philosophy. So I've talked about this book before, but it's such a brilliant book. The Pig That Wants to Be Eaten. This is a really interesting book of 100 thought experiments. It's written by Julian Baggini, who has written lots of kind of introductions to philosophy and those kind of things. And this is one of those books where you read the thought experiment or the problem, and there's usually some ethical issue, or there's a decision to be made. And what happens is it explores the different possible answers and what it says about philosophy, which way you go with this problem. And it kind of takes you into the direction of a philosopher that talks about that particular thing. So it's a really fantastic way of getting into philosophy, and it's a really cool book. And when I was a student, philosophy was one of my favourite modules that I did before I did my degree. But yeah, Pig That Wants to Be Eaten, really interesting and thought-provoking book. And then last thing, dance is the subject for the last book. And for dance, you've got to pick a fast-paced book. So something with movement, something with a lot of movement. And for this one, I'm actually going to pick Expatriates by Peter Clines. So I'm not sure what the general opinion is of these books. This is a series of books which is basically matching the superhero trope with the zombie scenario. So there's a zombie outbreak. It's a kind of this post-apocalyptic zombie thing, and the people are having to deal with it, but they are aided by a bunch of superheroes with different abilities, and there's like an evil super villain in it as well, and it's quite comic booky. It is literally like a prose novel version of a comic book, but it's very fast paced. It's obviously very frivolous and not particularly deep, but I'm kind of including this because I'm curious to know if anyone sees this and goes, "Oh, I like those books," because I've read 3 of them. I've got 4, so I've got the 4th one to read. But yeah, Expatriates, Peter Clines, superheroes dealing with zombies. So there you go. That's my subject book tag. I'm going to tag a couple of people because I think that's the right thing to do, to tag people. And we'll, face the coming of the autumn term together. I'm going to tag Crystal at Fibre Artsy and MJ at Reading This Life. So if you two want to do that, it'd be cool. But if anyone wants to do this, please do. It's a kind of interesting way of looking at your books. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 subjects there, because I added those 3 other ones. But I'll leave the links down to the people that I saw do this tag and the people I've tagged. And there we go. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye.
Picture